Well, folks, FM24 is very nearly upon us, and I've been lucky enough to get early access to an alpha build of the game, thanks to those lovely little rascals over at Sports Interactive. So without further ado, let's go and have a look at FM24, shall we? And we are going to start things off on a brand new screen where we have to choose our game mode. We've never had to do this before. We have three choices: original mode, real world mode, and your world mode. Let's have a look at what the difference is between the three of those. So first up, I've started a save on original mode with Manchester City. Original mode is the mode we've always had in Football Manager before. So as you would expect, all of the summer transfers that happened in real life have happened. The squad is as it is in real life, and for comparison purposes, let's just check on the finances. They start off with a budget of 35.8 million in transfer budget and an extra 600,000 or so of wage budget. Let's see how that compares to the other two game modes. Real world mode, which gives us squads accurate to the start date of the 3rd of July, and then has all of the future transfers in, both in and out of the club on the dates that they happen in real life. So for example, Josko Gvardiol joins the club for £77 million on the 5th of August 2023. And then on the flip side of that, Shay Charles joins Southampton for £10.5 million on the 12th of July 2023. You can see they're all set up as pre-arranged transfers. Finance-wise, the transfer budget is exactly the same as on original mode because it takes into account the future transfers both in and out. We do have a little bit of difference on what is currently being spent, but the committed spend, again, is the same as it is in original mode. So you've still got £35.8 million to spend, but all these transfers that happen in real life will happen on the day they happened. And then thirdly, the one that excites me the most, especially from a content creation point of view, is your world mode, where once again, the squads are accurate as of the 3rd of July 2023, but there are no future transfers in place. The squad is set as it was. So no Gvardiol, for example. Shay Charles is still knocking around at the club, and because of that, the finances are completely different. We now have a transfer budget of £102 million to spend and £800,000, £700,000 of spare wage budget, and that reflects the impact of all those pre-arranged transfers that would have come in and out in real world mode not having happened. So you can now do completely different transfers or try and replicate real life if you want to. There's a lot of mileage in this. Very excited about this as a new game mode. But for now, I've jumped back into original mode, the mode we all know and love, because there are other new features that I wanted to be able to show you around. First up, we have the changes to tactics in FM24. So we have new positions that do new things. The first new position, the inverted fullback, which effectively means that when you are in possession, these fullbacks tuck in and become centre-backs. The example they've used in all the marketing is Kyle Walker here at Manchester City. So when City are on the attack, Walker will tuck in, Gvardiol will tuck in, and because we can now have a libero in as a centre-back in our back four, which you couldn't do before, we can now have one of our central defenders as a libero. So what this means in possession is Stones goes forward to there. Rodri, because of the new player rotations, will move across to make room for him. Diaz will come into the centre, and then Walker and Gvardiol both tuck in. So when you're in possession, you end up with a system that looks much more like this. Very similar to what Manchester City do in real life. But you don't have to do it with two inverted fullbacks. You can make use of a role that was already in the game previously, the inverted wing-back, and use an inverted wing-back with two centre-backs and an inverted fullback on that side. And what happens when this one is in possession? Your inverted wing-back, again, moves forward into the DM position. The DM that's there moves across to make room for them, and then everyone shuffles across again. So Gvardiol still tucks in from that side, and because of that positional rotation, Gvardiol tucking in pushes Diaz and Stones across to make a back three. So you get to the same shape, but you can do it in multiple different ways. Another interesting little tactical tweak is that wingers no longer have a forced instruction to run wide with the ball. So you can actually have a winger who starts really, really wide, put the cut inside with ball instruction on them, and rather than being a winger who stays wide and tries to get the cross in, they're a winger who starts wide, so wider than an inside forward or an inverted winger would, but then once they get the ball, look to move inside, which is Again, very snazzy. And we are going to have a look at that in action in the match engine in a second. But before we do, I also wanted to show you the new Setpiece Creator, because my word, it is completely different to anything we've ever had in the game before. So when you first click on Set Pieces, which is a brand new tab, you go through this little meeting with your set piece coach, or a coach set to look after set pieces. This guy's not a set piece coach. You don't need to have a set piece coach for this to work. You just need to have someone allocated to do your set pieces. And then it asks you a number of questions. You do get a staff preference on each of these questions. That's not necessarily related to what your team would be best at. That's more to do with what your staff member would prefer. So that's not going to vary. If you sign a load of players who are terrible at marking, he's not going to move to zonal marking, for example. But you can choose what you want. So I'll have some hybrid marking. I'd quite like to aim for the near post. When it comes terms with leaving players forward, I think we'll go balanced as well. We are going to aim for the near post, and we're going to stay balanced there as well. And I like an in-swinging corner. And based on all that information, it then comes up with a set piece routine for you. And this is very, very different from what we've been able to do in the past. For example, you can't drag and move these players around on here. This is just like a visual example of what's going on over here. All the instructions and all the design of the set pieces happens over in these little drop-down boxes and lists over here. And this just gives you the visual representation of what it looks like. So if we want to replicate a good old-fashioned in-swinging near post corner, you can see that on here we've got an attacking corner routine. You can have up to 3 loaded. And if you load more than one, you can actually dictate how often you do each of them. So we've got our in-swinger for the near post. If we want an in-swinger for the far post as well, we can say, right, we want to do the near post one more often, the far post one less often, and you can see down there then roughly how often they're going to do each one of them. But if we focus on our near post in-swinger, you can then choose where you want different players and who you want where, and move everybody around. And that's done not according to specific player, not according to the position they play on the pitch. It's all done according to your lists. Each of the 4 different areas that you can have set up for a set piece has a priority list. So your aerial threats in order. You can ask your assistant to assign that, or you can move your aerial threats around as you see fit. So as standard, Erling Haaland, the biggest aerial threat for Manchester City. He's also the biggest box threat. Your best creator is Kevin De Bruyne, but he's going to be taking the corner, so it then defaults to Bernardo Silva. And then you've got your best recovery defender is Ruben Diaz, who's also pretty high up on aerial threat as well. So we've got the same players drifting towards the top of each lists, but that's covered as well because you can then set your priority. So what is the priority order of each of these lists? So number 1 priority is your corner taker. You can't change that, but everything else you can change. So if your top priority is having your best aerial threats in the aerial threat positions, leave that in second place. But if actually your highest priority is you want to make sure you've got your best recovery defenders in place first, you can just move your recovery defenders up to show you the impact that has within the set piece itself. If we put a preview with starting 11 on, you can see that if we've got 4 aerial threats, which is what we've asked for on the previous screen, we could have said, actually, let's have a box threat, and you can move them down into box threat if you can actually learn to drag and drop properly. But we're going to stick with the one that my assistant manager has created with me for now. Obviously, there's going to be lots of time when the game comes out to play around with different ways to do this. But if we put our preview with starting 11 in again, based on top priority being aerial threat, our aerial threats are Haaland, Diaz, Rodri and Stones, and our recovery defenders are Walker, Gvardiol and Bernardo Silva. But if we were to go back into those priority lists and say, actually, my top priority is recovery defenders, my creators are actually a higher priority than aerial threats. I don't know why you'd do this at a corner, but for this example, let's do it and then go back in and preview again. And you can see everything has changed because we're prioritizing defenders. We've now got Diaz, Walker and Stones doing the recovery defender jobs. Haaland is still on there as an aerial threat because he's not good at the other stuff, but Bernardo Silva and Grealish become the creators, and that leaves our aerial threats as Haaland, Rodri, Gvardiol, and poor old Phil Foden, who's got to pretend he's any kind of aerial threat. So you've got a lot of customizability on this to set it up exactly how you want it to be. And like I say, we're barely scratching the surface on this at the moment. So there's going to be lots and lots of playing around with this, and it's going to take a little bit of time to work out what our best way of setting up these set pieces are. Of course, we'll get there, but for now, I mean, there's so many options within each of these, and like I say, you can drag and drop and move them around into whichever areas you want to move them, and so much customization, so much more powerful than what we had before. And this is not just on corners, and you've got it on attacking and defensive corners, but you've also got it on free kicks, whether they're in shooting range, wide or deep, even throw-ins. You can set up how you want your throw-ins to work. So when a throw-in is in the middle of the pitch, do we want to retain possession or work the line? If you do a throw-in in the attacking third and decide to go for a long throw, you get into the full-on putting people exactly where you want them as if they were corners. It's so powerful. We've asked for it for so long. I'm so happy, and I'm going to spend so much time playing with this so that I can continue being the king of corner hacks. So let's jump into a match then and have a look at all of this in action. We've started with the libero in the middle and the inverted fullbacks, sorry, on the side. And as you could see from there, we had the back three in place with Ruben Diaz pushing forward to be the second holding midfield player. But when we give away possession, we end up with a flat back four, as you saw a little glimpse of there. What you also saw a little glimpse of is the ball bouncing in one of its new ways. We had that shot that goes into the ground that they talked about in one of the announcement videos. I think we've got the replay of it here, and you can see Haaland hits it into the ground and it bounces up past the keeper. You didn't get that in FM23, boys and girls, but let's have a proper look at this back four. So we were defending, so we had that back four shape. We win the ball back, and you've seen Diaz has immediately charged forward to go alongside Rodri. I've zoomed out a little bit so you can see it in action. Rodri then shifts over slightly to make room for Diaz alongside him, and the two fullbacks just tuck in to make a three, and it's completely seamless as we transition between having the ball and not having the ball. Again, another example there, the opposition have got the ball, so we are in a flat four, but when we win it back, we transition straight away from it. So Diaz has come forward to try and win the ball back. I'm not actually sure if we win the ball as part of this move. It might just be a nice little attack for the under-21s. It is a nice little, or the B team, the second 11. It's not the under-21s anymore in this first fixture. So it's a corner for them. I think they're looking for that in-swinger. They're playing with my tactics, so they should use the same corner that I created. Half-time then, we switched things around just to show it working the other way, and decided to go with normal centre-backs and Kyle Walker as an inverted wing-back. So again, with the opposition with the ball, you can see it's with the back four, but when we win it back, you should now see Walker come forward into the DM position and the back four. There you go. We win the ball back and Walker immediately charges forward and the remaining three defenders shuffle across. We start with a back four. This is a great example of it. Walker picks the ball up deep, plays it to Ake, who's now in the middle of a three. And look at Walker charge forward. He's now up alongside the midfielders, and it's just a 3-2-4-1, and Walker's actually further ahead than Rodri here, and you can see how Diaz has gone across. No, sorry, that's Gvardiol. Diaz has gone across to be right back. Gvardiol's tucked in, and Ake is in the middle of a defensive three. If you are really focusing on that, like I was, you might have missed the goal. Luckily, we've got two replays of it because it was a suspicious offside. So you can see Foden with the ball across. Nunez just, drills it past the keeper. I don't see how there's any suspicion of offside there at all, but we have another little look at it with the lines on. Never any doubt at all. It was always absolutely fine. And then we've switched it up again following some substitutions. We've now switched it so the left back is the inverted wing back. You can see Kane Taylor has come off the bench, and it's a real clear example of it there, the three and then the two. And this time it's Walker who's tucked in, and Ake, who was in the middle of the three when Gvardiol was on, has now moved over to left back. Diaz is in the middle, and all of that is happening automatically as part of these positional rotations. Ake, who, like I say, was central before, look how wide he is now because he's on the left-hand side of that three. It's all very, very, very clever. And that, boys and girls, brings us to the end of this first look at FM24. Unfortunately, I was only allowed to show you 15 minutes worth of stuff, Believe me, there's loads more to this game, and I cannot wait for us to get started on it in the near future, I want to say. Fingers crossed. If you've enjoyed the video, though, please make sure you leave a nice big thumbs up on it for me. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on all of the FM24 content I've got ready to throw at you just the moment the early access drops. And thank you very much for watching.